Hello. I just put my first batch in. Something startled me. Something fell over there. Hamlin towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city. The river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you've never spied. But when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, and bit the babies in the cradles, made the cheeses from the vats, and licked the soup from the cooks on the ladles, split open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests and bent Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last, the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking, to think we buy gowns lined with ermine, for dolts who can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to find in the furry civic robes ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, to find the remedy we are lacking, or sure as fate will send you packing." At this, the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a guilder I'd my ermine gown sell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door, but a gentle tap. Bless us," cried the mayor. "What's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little through wondrous fat. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister than a too long opened oyster, save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes, each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek, nor beard on chin, but lips or smile went out and in, there was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced towards the council table, and "Please, your honor," said he, "I am able, by means of secret charm to draw, all the creatures living beneath the sun, that crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper." And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat the self-same check, and at scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers they noticed were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. "Yes," said he, "Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I fled to Cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders?" 50,000 was the exclamation of astonished mayor and corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Like a musical adept to blow his pipe, his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, you heard as if an army muttered, and a muttering grew to a grumbling, and a grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses came the rats tumbling, great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one whose stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary. which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into the cider presses gripe, and moving away pickle tub boards, and leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and breaking the hoops of butter casks. It seemed as if a voice, sweeter far than by harp or by psalteries breed, called out, "O rats, rejoice! The world is growing to a vast dry saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone, gracious, scarce an inch before me, just as me thought it said come bore me, found the west rolling over me." You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells and they rocked the steeple. "Go," cried the mayor, "and get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes. Consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats." When suddenly up the face the piper perked in the marketplace. "The first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders." 1,000 guilders. The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too. For council dinners made rare havoc with claret, moselle, vin de gras, hock, and half the money would replenish their cellar's biggest butt of Rhenish, to pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat to red and yellow. "Besides," quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, "our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, and a matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, was a joke. Besides, our losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face fell and he cried, "No trifling, I can't wait beside. I promise a visit by dinner time, Baghdad, except the crime the head cook's pottage. All he's rich in, having left in the Calip's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions, no survivor. With him I prove no bargain driver. With you don't think I'll bait the stiver. And folks who put me in a passion, they find me pipe after another fashion." "How," cried the mayor, "do you think I brook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, with idle pipe and vesture piebald? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst." Once more he stepped into the street, to his lips again laid his long pipe with smooth straight cane, and ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as a musician's cunning never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustle, and the merry crowd was justling at pitching and hustling, small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, and little tongues chattering, like foals in the farmyard when barley is scattering. Out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, with sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping ran merrily after. The wonderful music was shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood, as if they're changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily skipping by, could only follow with an eye that joyous crowd at the piper's back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat, as the piper turned from the high street, to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. However, he turned from south to west, and to Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top. He's forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cabin was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced and the children followed. When all were in the very last, the door at the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance the whole of the way. And in after years, if you'd blame his sadness, he was used to say, "It's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town in just at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers put forth a fairer view. And everything was strange and new. The sparrow was buried in a peacock here, and our dogs outran our fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured, my lame foot would be speedily cured, the music stopped and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas, from Hamelin, there came into many a burgher's pate a text which says that heaven's gate opes the rich at his easy rate, as a needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south, taught for the piper by word of mouth, wherever was men's lot to find him, silver and gold whose heart's content, if only he returned the way he went, to bring the children behind him. But when they saw it was lost endeavor, and piper and dancers were gone forever, they made a decree that lawyers never should take their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year, these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, in a better memory to fix, the place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing piper tabor was sure for his future to lose his labor, nor suffered they hostelry or tavern to show off which were the street so solemn. And opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and on great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away. And there it stands this very day. And I must not admit to say that in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress, to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison, into which they were Japan, a long time ago in a mighty band, out of Hamlin towns in Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats or from mice, if we promise them aught, let us keep our promise. There once was a young man named Roland Pye who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his recorder to rest a while from all his baking, when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put down his recorder, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed. From that day on, Roland Pye was the happiest baker alive. He would bake until he was tired. Then he'd pull his recorder out and play while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pye lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame. So the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning, he said that Roland was a good baker, was a good worker, but lazy. Next, he said that Roland baked a whole lot, but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Roland Pye, therefore, took his pipe and left his home behind. When Roland Pye came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him for work to keep body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man, "and we will share alms." So Roland Pye and the old man started going around and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are. Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pied. "That's what you say. There is a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pied went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been used by anyone. Roland Pied mixed the dough, then he rolled it into rings. Then he boiled them, dressed them with seeds, then he baked them until they were golden brown. Then he tossed them into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied of baking, he would play his recorder, and once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Hearing the singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland Pied and fell in love with him. But she was a princess and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they were already on the high seas, Roland Pied remembered the old man, remembered the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man, since he shared his alms with me. We can't go off and leave him like that." At that very moment, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I own. Now you have the king's daughter and must give half of her to me." At this, the old man gave Roland Pied a knife to cut his bride in half. Roland Pied took the knife with a trembling hand. "You are right," he said. "You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in two, when suddenly the old man stopped him. "Stop! I knew you were a just man. I am the dead man, mind you, whom you buried, covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds. thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, asked us to watch the working of his lie online, and most scarce able to afford suppression of the greed and personally scored its end yet one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What save the wailing with his lies and snare? All travelers might find him posted there, and ask the road, I guess what skull-like laugh would break, what crutch can write my epitaph to pastime in a dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside and go on his track which all agree hides a dark tower, yet acquiescently I did turn as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end descried, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring my heartbeat finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, and feels begin and end the tears, and takes the farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other go, draw breath freely outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no grieving can amend. While some discuss if near other graves be room enough for this, and when a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with care about banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears all and only craves, he may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus I had for so long suffered in this quest, heard failure prophesied so often in writ, so many times among the band to wit, the knights who two dark towers searched and rest their steps, that just to fail as they seemed best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, that hateful cripple, out of his highway into the path he pointed. All the day had been a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, yet shot one grim red leer to see the plain catch its stray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged to the plain after a pace or two, and pausing through backward a last view, over the safe road 'twas gone, grey plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw so starved ignoble nature. Nothing throve. For flowers as well expect a cedar grove, but turtle and spurge, according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You'd think a burr had been a treasure trove. No penry inertness remains in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes, said nature peevishly. In nothing skills, I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment's fire must cure this place. Calcine is clawed and set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous else. What made the holes and rents in the dog's heart forth leave? Bruised as to balk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, passion their life over the brute's intents. As for the grass, it grew as scarce as hair and leprosy. Thin, dry blades pricked the mud which underneath was kneaded up with blood. One stiff, blind horse, as every bone is scared, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past service in the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red, gaunt, and calloped neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart, as a man calls for wine before he fights. I asked one draught from earlier, happier sights. Ere fitly I could hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterwards, the soldier's art. One taste of old times, it's all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's redly face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt him fold an arm and mine to fix me to that place, that way he used. Alas, one night's disgrace, how at my heart in fire and left it cold. Giles, then, the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago when knighted first. An honest man should dare, he said he durst. Good, but the scene shifts. Saw what hangman's hand pinned to his breast a parchment. His own band reads it. Poor traitor spit upon and cursed. Better this present than a past like that. Back therefore to my darkening path. No sound, no sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howlet or a bat, I asked, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came. No tides congenial to the glooms. This as if frostbite might have been a bath for the fiend's glowing hoof, to see the wrath of its black eddies be spat with flakes and spoons. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it. Drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rout despair. The suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by, deterred no whit. Which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek. You'd step or feel the spear I thrust to seek, for hollows tangled in his narrow beard. It may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, who are the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poisoned tank, or wild cats in a red-hot cage. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading to that horrid muse. None out of it. Mad Bruin set to work, their brains no doubt, like galley slaves the Turks, pits for his pastime Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there, what bad use was that engine for? That wheel or brake not wheel, that harrow fit to reel men's bodies out like silk, with all the air of Tophet's tool, on earth left unaware or brought to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some stub ground, once of wood, next to marsh it would seem, now mere earth. Desperate and done with, so the fool finds mirth, makes a thing and mars it, till his mood changes and off he goes, within a rude bog, clay and marsh, sand and stark black dearth. Now blotches rank like colored gay and grim, now patches where some leanness of the soils broke into moss or substances like boils. Then came a palsied oak, a cleft in him, a distorted mouth that splits its rim, gaping at death and dies while it coils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance, but leaving not quite my footsteps further at the thought, great black bird, Apollyon, bosom friend, sailed past nor beat his wide wings dragon pen, that brushed my cap, perchance the guide I sought. For looking up aware I somehow grew, the plain had given place all round to mountains with such names as grace, mere heights and heaps now stolen in view. How thus they surprised me, solvent knew, how to get from there was no clear case. Yet half I seemed to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me, God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps, here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time, came a click as when the trap shuts are in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once, this was the place, those two hills crouched like two bulls locked horn in fight, while to the left a tall scalp mountain, Dunt's daughter a dozing, at the very nunce, after a lifetime of training for the sight. What in the midst lay but the tower itself, the round squat turret, blind as a fool's heart, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest mocking elf points to the shipman thus, the unseen shelf. He strikes on only when timbers start. Not see, because of night perhaps, why day came back for that. Behind it left the dying sunset, kindled to a cleft. The hills like two giants in the hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay. Now stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere, it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, of lost adventurers, my peers. How such was strong, and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old, lost one moment, now the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, dauntless the slunk one to my lips I set and blew. Child Roland to a dark tower came. when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal stations to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, and whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is their right to alter or abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And experience accordingly hath shown that whenever mankind are more... Oh, I forgot that part. And experience accordingly hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer when evils are sufferable than right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But when long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces the design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the long, patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good.